Welcome. Welcome to JoJo's Bizarre Adventures.
I love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It is without a shadow of a doubt one of the most innovative, influential, incredible series that I have ever had the pleasure of viewing. And I'm very happy that the more time passes, the more people are getting into this masterpiece. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a series that I, honest to God, cannot compare to anything else within the medium. It really is that unique. Written and illustrated by Hirohiko Araki and serialized in Weekly Shonen Jump all the way back in 1987, JoJo's has achieved a legendary status and is still to this day arguably the most important work in all of anime and manga history. This might be kind of hard to believe if you're from somewhere like America or Europe, but in Japan, JoJo's is a huge deal, inspiring more anime, manga, and video games than I can even count. Look at it this way, any American growing up in the 90s or 2000s can tell you who this guy is. Similarly, any Japanese person who was alive in Japan can tell you who this guy is. There currently exist 8 different parts to this series: Phantom Blood, Battle Tendency, Stardust Crusaders, Diamond is Unbreakable, Vento Oreo, Stone Ocean, Steel Ball Run, and JoJolion, but only the first 4 currently have anime adaptations. I should probably make it clear, no, I have not read any of the mangas, nor do I plan on doing so unless the anime is cancelled, so all of the information I'll be talking about comes exclusively from the show. I've been wanting to talk about this for a very, very long time now, and with part 4 of the anime coming to its conclusion, I see no better time than right now. Because this show is divided into 4 separate, wildly different parts, we'll be talking about each one individually in its own video, starting with what kicked it all off, Phantom Blood. So then, ladies and gentlemen, let's not waste any more time and hop right into Weegee Talks JoJo. Now, before we really get into the meat and potatoes of this thing, it would be a crime not to first talk about its Elder God tier OP, Sonochino Sadame. Really good OPs is a reoccurring theme in JoJo's, and Sonochino Sadame isn't even one of my favorites from the 7 that we currently have. I could make this entire video be dedicated to analyzing nothing but the OP itself, but thankfully I don't have to because my buddy Jeff from Mother's Basement already did, and he did it about a million times better than I could ever dream of doing anyway. If you want a very well done, in-depth look at the OPs of this show, then I highly recommend checking out some of the videos that he's done. I'll leave links in the description so you can go check him out, and make sure to tell him that I say hi. So as I said, Phantom Blood is the first part of the series and Araki's first ever real story, due to the simple fact that this was his first time not only really writing, but also illustrating. A lot of people look back at part 1 as the black sheep of the series. As time went on, Araki's style changed very drastically, to the point where part 1 is almost unrecognizable as JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I mean, seriously, going into the series blind and looking at this and this? Would you even think that this was the same show? Color tone, character design, environments, pacing, tone, music, sound design, directing, the differences are both numerous and radical, but not necessarily better or worse, just different. With that being said, as much as I love part 1, I personally would say that it is my least favorite part of the series. For me, 2 over 4 over 3 over 1. This show changes so much over time that everybody's obviously going to have their own opinion. But for me, again, let me stress just one more time, I fucking love part 1. I think that Phantom Blood does have some glaring pacing issues and lack of character development which holds it back. To get a better understanding of what I'm saying, let's do a quick TLDR for part 1, Phantom Blood. It's a dark and stormy night in 1868 England, and we see that a carriage of a rich family, the Joestars, has careened off the side of a cliff, killing everybody but the father and his infant son. A dickhead thief comes to loot the corpses, but George, that's the father, mistakes him for a rescuer and vows to repay him for his kindness. The camera also pans down from a trail of blood and centers on an ominous stone mask. I wonder if that thing's going to be important to the story. Time skip. It's 12 years later and Jonathan, that's the infant son, is a polite, upstanding young gentleman, albeit kind of a spastic at times. On the other side of the coin, we see Dario Brando, that's the dickhead thief, is sick and laying in his deathbed, where we're also introduced to his son, Dio, who you can tell by literally the first shot we see him in that he is a bad dude. Dario Brando eventually bites the dust and... Wait, okay, no. He doesn't bite the dust. He, die. We'll get to that in part 4. Anyway, he leaves his son with the reward George Joestar gave him all those years ago, an IOU One Dad coupon for his son. Dio is adopted into the Joestar family and begins bullying the fuck out of Jonathan to make him want to kill himself. From beating up his dog, to beating him up some more, to sexually assaulting his girlfriend, to locking his dog in a furnace, the show does a great job on making it clear that Dio is in fact a bad dude. Time skip another 7 years. Jonathan and Dio are finally getting along with one another. Except not really, because Jonathan quickly discovers that Dio is poisoning his father to death in order to gain his inheritance, just as he did with Dario. Jonathan sets out with the poison to get it analyzed and into the police's hand, and Dio's like, fuck, I gotta kill this guy now. This ominous stone mask from the first scene hasn't been used yet, maybe it can help me out. Oh, it turns people into vampires with retard strength and superpowers. I think I got an idea. Jonathan returns to the manor with his new best friend in the whole wide world, Robert E.O. Speedwagon, and the police, and the guy who was selling Dio poison in the first place. Dio, being cornered, denounces his humanity, slaps on the mask, and proceeds to fight Jonathan while making just all sorts of lovely noises. Jonathan burns his house down with Dio impaled on a statue, and all is right in the world. But it's not, because he's still alive and out recruiting for a vampire army to take over the world. Also, Jonathan is getting his wounds treated by his old girlfriend, Erina Pendleton. She's important to the story, so make sure not to forget her. Jonathan then encounters Baron Zappelli, an Italian guy who was the uncoverer of the stone mask, and also a magical aerobic sun karate fighter. Wow, saying that out loud really puts into perspective how fucking weird this show is. Zappelli proceeds to punch a frog and cracks the rock it's sitting on without harming it, which isn't necessarily important to the plot, but it's one of the best moments in the entire series, so I feel like I couldn't not mention it. He then teaches Jonathan the aforementioned magical aerobic sun karate, Haman for short, but he doesn't teach Speedwagon because... So the three set out on their journey across England to defeat Dio and make sure that the vampire threat is quelled from the earth. They do! But they don't, actually. And also Zappelli dies in episode 7. Dio, almost defeated, cuts his head from his body and is then shoved into a coffin and put onto a boat sailing to America by the old Asian poison salesman. Take a guess who's also on that boat? That's right, Jonathan and Erina. Did you forget about her? I can't blame you if you did. Jonathan rigs the ship to explode, gives Dio's head a big old bear hug, and the two of them go out together in a blaze of glory, with Erina keeping herself and some rando baby safe by hiding in the coffin that Dio came in on. So that's basically Phantom Blood, and don't worry, we'll go more in depth on how head-spinningly bullshit this ending is in part 3, but just keep in mind for everyone else who doesn't know what I'm talking about, this doesn't make any fucking sense later on. Now, do you notice how much I had to say about the first 3.5 episodes compared to the other 6? Well, if you did, you're a smart cookie. You two are able to see the problem with part 1. The beginning of this part is genuinely flawless. The pacing is perfect, the directing is godlike, the characters are bursting with personality, and we're introduced to them not through long-winded bouts of mind-numbing exposition, but by us the viewers getting to see them be themselves in their everyday lives. All of that comes screeching to an ironic halt once we're introduced to Haman, and and how it's used to fight the dead, because the next 3.5 episodes are just Jonathan, Zappelli, and their cheerleader fighting a bunch of literally who zombies with nothing else going on. We never get to see what Erina's doing, we barely get to see what Dio's doing, although the few scenes we do get are awesome, and we never even get to learn all that much about the trio itself. What the fuck happened in between those 7 years where Jonathan and Dio supposedly became best friends? We know about Zappelli finding the mask and how he became a Haman warrior to destroy it, but what exactly was he doing while the mask was in the Joestar's possession? And where did he get the information about Dio that prompted him to go search for Jonathan in the first place? What is the deal with Speedwagon? When we first meet him, he's a hardcore thug who's about to rob and murder Jonathan, but quickly becomes nothing more than an adoring fanboy who sits in the corner and cheers Jonathan on during battles. Now, listen, I'm sorry, I love Speedwagon, I really do. He's an Elder God tier bro, and he plays a much bigger role in Part 2, but even the biggest Speedwagon fan out there can't deny that as a whole in Part 1, he's pretty actually useless. What this show needed was less action and more interaction. You know why Battle of Gods was such a good movie while Broly the legendary Super Saiyan sucked ass? This one focused on the characters, and this one focused on fighting. You know why the beginning of Phantom Blood was so engaging while the middle part was so forgettable? This one focused on the characters, and this one focused on the fighting. Now I know it's kind of hard to make that comparison when we've known these characters for so long and we're just seeing these ones for the first time, but the point still stands. These are interesting characters with interesting backstories, and while it's rad as fuck to watch a beautifully animated Jonathan annihilate zombies with sunlight yellow overdrive, we needed more downtime with these characters to balance that out. The climax, episode 8, was actually very well done, pitting these two characters with great chemistry and unique abilities against each other. It was definitely a highlight of part 1. The conclusion, episode 9, is a completely different story. Alone, it works just fine. Jonathan sacrifices himself in order to destroy his lifelong nemesis while saving the woman he loves along with their unborn baby. Again, not to go into too much detail because I want to save it for part 3, Part 3 completely destroys everything about this ending, leaving a massive plot hole that Araki can't seem to answer for in its place. If I had to summarize the entire plot of this arc with only one word, it would have to be formulaic. Assuming that you've passed 7th grade English, and if you haven't, what the fuck is wrong with you, you've no doubt heard about the hero's journey, a common storytelling template about a hero who goes on an adventure, achieves victory in the face of conflict, and returns home a changed person. Well, that right there is verbatim what Phantom Blood is. A predictable story that anyone with half a brain can see through and know exactly what's going to happen. But it's really fucking good. One word that a lot of people like to toss around while describing this show is stylish, and I think that's a pretty damn good way to describe it. Not a single show comes close to matching the aesthetic and feel of Phantom Blood. Not even the other parts within the series. All of them are just so unique and original. One thing that this show loves to do as a whole is play around with colors to effectively convey tone. Each part manages to do this in its own unique way, and all of them, including Phantom Blood, do it tremendously well. The cartoonishly expressive faces and drastic lighting effects makes you feel like you're watching a comic book, and David Productions, the studio in charge of the anime adaptation, managed to capture that feeling perfectly. Another thing that lends heavily to the overall aesthetic is the fantastically composed music by Hayato Matsu, which mixes classical orchestral music with just a dash of electronica to keep things feeling modern. Speaking of music, have I mentioned that Araki loves that shit? I'm not too sure if you've picked up on it, but almost every single character has some sort of Western musical reference behind it. For example, Dio is named after heavy metal singer Ronnie James Dio, Aaron Pendleton is named after a mispronunciation of the Beatles' Eleanor Rigby, Robert E.O. Speedwagon is named after the rock band REO Speedwagon, Zeppeli is named after famous English band Led Zeppelin. The list goes on and on and on. And if you think part 1 has a lot of musical references, just wait for Stans to be introduced. So in conclusion, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1 Phantom Blood is an incredibly fun and exciting way to establish the world of JoJo's and prepare us for the arcs to come. It's brought us some of the most memorable moments in the entire series, and despite being overshadowed by the more elaborate contrasting parts of the show, it certainly holds a nostalgic place near and dear to my heart as the beginning of one of anime's all-time greatest products. If you've made it this far into the video, then I'd like to propose a question. What's your favorite part, and why? I'm honestly really curious to see what your guys' opinions are, so make sure to leave a comment down below letting me know. For me personally, as I've said, my favorite part has to be number 2, Battle Tendency, which is the next arc we're going to be going over, something I am incredibly excited for. Make sure to subscribe and hit that stupid bell thing YouTube implemented so you don't miss it, because just like the part itself, it's gonna be good. But for now though, I guess you could say that this series is to be continued!